Malcolm Maxwell had always been enthralled by the idea of superheroes. As a kid, he would press his face against the TV screen, studying every punch, every super speed dash, every gravity defying leap. When a freak cosmic event left him with actual powers, he thought it was the best thing that could ever happen to him. There was just one problem. He couldn't seem to keep track of which power showed up at which time. While other heroes soared gracefully through the sky or melted steel beams at will, Malcolm's every attempt at heroics turned into a bungled mess fueled by confusion. Still, he was determined to protect his city, if only the city felt the same level of confidence about him. His first official day as a superhero started out simply enough, or so he had hoped. While perched on top of a modest building, wearing an ill-fitting spandex suit stitched together from various sports store bargains, he caught sight of a desperate cry for help. A cat, perched precariously on a thin tree branch halfway along a busy street, mewed pitifully. Malcolm paused, trying to summon the power of levitation so he could float gracefully and rescue the forlorn feline. The problem was that the last time he had tried to fly, he inadvertently developed electroshock hands, zapping a lamppost into sparks. No matter this time, he would do it right. So he closed his eyes, clenched his fists, and took a bold step, only to find himself sinking through the rooftop as if he had turned intangible. He yelped in shock and popped right back into solid form, leaving him half stuck in the roof. He re-emerged on the other side of the corner storefront, scaring a pair of teenagers who ran off screaming about Ghost Man. Embarrassed, he scrambled for a new approach. The cat was still on the branch, and the crowd below was watching, half expectant, half worried. Determined not to botch his first heroic display, Malcolm tried Plan B. Super stretchy arms. He was certain he had occasionally turned his limbs rubbery in the past. Summoning that memory, he reached out. Indeed, his arm elongated, except he hadn't quite accounted for the sudden impetus of super strength that piggybacked on that power. His extended arm slapped into the branch with such force that the tree trunk snapped, cat and all, sending branches tumbling into the crowd. Panicked, Malcolm hopped off the roof, hoping to channel super speed to catch the cat. Of course, that's precisely when flight kicked in. He found himself drifting upward at the same sluggish pace the cat plummeted downward. A helpful bystander caught the cat safely in a cushion of stacked boxes while Malcolm hovered overhead like a confused balloon. Not a great start for the city's newest guardian. Undeterred, Malcolm regrouped in an alley, giving himself a motivational pep talk. "You can do this," he told his reflection in a cracked mirror behind a dumpster. "All you have to do is pick the right power at the right time." He thought maybe the problem was that he was overthinking everything. Perhaps if he just relaxed, the powers would come more intuitively exactly when he needed them. Then he heard a piercing alarm ring out nearby. A bank robbery in progress. This was his moment. He sprinted toward the bank, envisioning the perfect combination of super sped and super strength that would allow him to burst through the doors and subdue the thieves in seconds. Fate, however, decided a comedic approach was more fun. Malcolm zoomed around a corner, only to slam face first into what felt like an invisible barrier. He fell backward with a thud, stars dancing behind his eyes. He slowly got up, confusion swirling in his head. Had he generated a force field around himself somehow? The urge to test it kicked in, and he carefully pressed a hand forward, feeling a slight resistance in the air. Yes, it seemed he had turned on invisible shield mode instead of super speed. "Well, that complicates things," he muttered, glancing around to see if any passersby had witnessed his humiliating collision with the air. He arrived at the bank, still sporting a personal force field, but zero clue how to turn it off. The robbers had cornered the teller, demanding money. Malcolm announced himself in heroic fashion, pointing a finger at the criminals. "Stop right there," he said with all the bravado he could muster. The thieves hesitated for a moment, neither sure if this new arrival was an actual threat or just a bizarre performer. Seizing the moment, Malcolm tried to activate a power he wasn't quite sure which one, but hopefully something that would freeze the robbers in place. Instead, he unleashed a burst of flame from his right hand, scorching one of the robbers' ski masks. Panicked, the man flailed around, yowling as a small flame spurted from the edge of his hat. Malcolm hurried to fix the mishap by turning it into a watery deluge. He clenched his left fist, aiming to summon a quick splash of water. Only the flame didn't extinguish him. He merely spouted a gust of wind that knocked the man into a row of desks. Another robber stood behind him, eyes wide. "What are you?" the criminal yelled, half in terror. The teller used the distraction to slip away. Finally, Malcolm pulled some semblance of composure together, swirling his hands in a comedic attempt at controlling his powers. "Water, water, I want water," he thought. Sure enough, a torrent of water lunged from both palms, soaking the entire bank lobby, including the robbers, the teller's booth, and Malcolm himself. Air conditioner vents spewed out musty condensation. The bank alarm shorted. On the upside, the robbers, now drenched, tried to make a run for it, only to slip on the tiled floor. That gave the police time to arrive and apprehend them. And though the job was done, the bank manager glared at Malcolm with a look of utter exasperation at the soggy carpets, dripping walls, and scattered papers turned to pulp. All Malcolm could do was grin sheepishly and dash out of the building before more damage could be pinned on him. Word spread that the city's well-intentioned new hero was more a wild card than a champion. Social media buzzed with stories, pictures, and videos. "Hero or hazard?" asked one post that garnered thousands of views. Ingrain City's news channels interviewed locals who had encountered him. He tried to x-ray a stuck door, but ended up blasting a hole through a vending machine, said a disgruntled cafe owner. "He soared overhead of my yard, then fell straight through my greenhouse," complained an amateur gardener. Still, some people defended him, pointing out how no one had actually been hurt in any of these mishaps, at least not seriously. "He's got a good heart, just questionable execution," said a street vendor who had offered Malcolm a free hot dog after one particularly clumsy morning. This strange hero was undeniably trying. Though whether effort alone was enough to protect the city remained up for debate. Determined to tame his erratic powers, Malcolm sought guidance from a reclusive mentor rumored to reside in a dilapidated warehouse near the pier. Master Raiko was a retired superhero who, legend said, once commanded dozens of abilities but gradually lost them over time. At first, she wasn't thrilled at the idea of coaching a seemingly incompetent new vigilante, but after hearing the exasperated pleas from city officials who hoped for a honest hero, she relented. Perched on a crate, her silver-white hair pulled into a neat bun, Reiko gazed at Malcolm appraisingly. "The problem," she said, "is that you're letting your fear rule your powers. Your mind must be calm for you to choose the right power at the right moment. You're essentially rummaging through a box of fireworks, lighting them at random and hoping for the best." She set up a series of training exercises designed to coax each power out one at a time. First, Malcolm tried flight. He flexed his shoulders, exhaled, and rose gently into the air. Success. He hovered about a foot above the ground, feeling stable. Then, with a slight shift in mental focus, he was supposed to switch to super strength. The transition did occur, but it happened simultaneously, so he rocketed upward and crashed his head into the rafters, cracking a support beam in two. The entire warehouse swayed threateningly. Master Reiko hissed and dashed aside before a chunk of debris could fall on her. Malcolm, mid-apology, tried to switch to telekinesis so he could hold the collapsing roof in place, but ended up hurling a stack of crates into the bay. It was chaos and oddly comedic as each attempt to fix the previous blunder triggered a new mistake. By the time the dust settled, the warehouse looked more battered than before. Master Reiko sat cross-legged on a remaining crate, sighing heavily. "Yes, you definitely need more practice," she said. A few days later, while Malcolm was in the middle of stumbling through a new training sequence, his super hearing kicked in, picking up frantic calls from across the city. An out-of-control bus careened down a crowded street with its brakes failing. Without waiting for Master Reiko's go-ahead, he took off, hoping to save the day and maybe redeem himself in the public's eyes. Racing toward the street where the bus was barreling forward, he tried to start with super speed. Instead, he triggered teleportation and blinked to the opposite side of town. Panicking, he teleported again, accidentally, this time, overshooting the disaster zone by 3 more blocks. Focus, focus, he muttered, shutting his eyes and picturing the speeding bus. On the third attempt, he landed squarely on the hood of the vehicle, startling the driver and passengers. Clinging to the front, Malcolm tried to generate enough friction to slow the bus, the way he had once halted a runaway scooter. But the bus was heavier, and to his alarm, he realized his friction field was replaced by elasticity. His body squished and stretched across the windshield, his face flattening comically against the glass. The screams from the passengers grew louder as the bus rattled toward an intersection. Summoning all his might, Malcolm desperately called upon flight. His body instantly hardened and shot skyward, bus in tow. Tires squealed, the engine whined, and the entire vehicle lifted about 10 feet off the ground before plunking back down with a jolt. That gave him a new idea. Maybe if he tried telekinesis, he could keep the bus afloat until it decelerated. For a fleeting second it worked. The bus hovered precariously above the asphalt. Onlookers gasped in amazement, snapping pictures. But nerves got the better of him, and his powers lurched from telekinesis to sonic clap. A deafening boom erupted, shattering a few nearby windows and swirling dust clouds around the bus. It dropped back to the street with a lurch, but a final squeal said the brakes locked at last. Against all odds, the bus came to a stop, only inches shy of colliding with the fruit stand. People erupted in relieved cheers. Malcolm hopped off, woozy but proud, as the bus driver and passengers stumbled out, shaken but thankful. While the fruit vendor shouted about the broken windows, an elderly woman gave Malcolm a watery smile. "Thank you," she said softly, clutching her purse. "You might be a bit clumsy, but you saved us. That made the fiasco worth it." Word got around that, while still unpredictable, the hero was genuinely saving lives. Even the press admitted that his track record included 0 fatalities and minimal injuries, albeit plenty of property damage. The city council found themselves in a bind. Should they continue to encourage this bungling hero or politely request he hang up his cape? Ultimately, they decided that some hero was better than none, especially since, with persistent training from Master Reiko, Malcolm's comedic mishaps were at least becoming less catastrophic. He was learning to switch powers more smoothly, though smooth remained a relative term in Malcolm's case. One evening, as Malcolm took a stroll through a quiet neighborhood, he noticed an electrifying flash near the local dam. An enormous silhouette loomed against the moonlit sky, an infamous villain, known as Disastro, rumored to harness the powers of storms. Disastro cackled as thunderclouds amassed overhead. Lightning crackled along his armored gauntlets, and it was clear he intended to unleash a flood by destroying the dam's control system. Panicked dam operators scrambled. Malcolm felt a knot tighten in his stomach. This threat was bigger than anything he'd faced. Still, he had come a long way. If he could keep his focus, maybe, just maybe, he could save the city from a watery grave. He soared toward the dam with as much grace as he could muster, determined to stick with flight this time. At first it worked. He glided above the swirling wind. Disastro noticed him and fired a bolt of lightning, which Malcolm dodged clumsily. He nearly crashed into a pylon but rebounded at the last second. "Oh, it's you!" Disastro sneered, a twisted grin spreading across his face. "The hero who can't decide which power to misfire next." Thunder boomed, and a wave of storm energy rushed toward Malcolm. Gritting his teeth, he tried to summon a force field, but inadvertently activated shapeshifting, turning his entire body into translucent slime. He oozed around the lightning bolt harmlessly, surprising even Disastro. "That's new," Malcolm muttered, reforming into his usual shape. To protect the dam, he needed the power of telekinesis or force beams, something that could block or redirect Disastro's blasts. Trying to calm his frantic heartbeat, he visualized a bright beam shooting from his palms. Indeed, he managed a flicker of energy that met Disastro's lightning head-on. Sparks clashed in the stormy sky. Then, as he tried to sustain the beam, it transformed into a freeze ray encasing a portion of the dam in ice. Water roared as it built up behind the structure. Panicking, Malcolm switched to heat vision, thawing the ice but inadvertently weakening the dam's structural integrity. Chunks of concrete under the sudden temperature change started cracking. Disastro roared with laughter. "You'll destroy the dam for me," spreading his arms wide. The villain conjured a massive thunderbolt, preparing to deliver a finishing blow. Malcolm closed his eyes. The city, the people, he had to save them. He thought back to Master Reiko's words about calmness and focus. Exhaling slowly, he steadied his twitching thoughts. One breath in, one breath out. Then he opened his eyes, raised his hands, and let out a surge of telekinetic energy. The colossal lightning bolt halted midair, crackling angrily, stuck in a swirling bubble of telekinetic force. Disastro's eyes widened, a flicker of disbelief crossing his visage. Seizing the advantage, Malcolm summoned a gust of wind to blow the lightning away from the dam, dispersing it into the sky. The air exploded in a brilliant flash, momentarily illuminating the entire river valley. Disastro stumbled, stunned at the sudden prowess of his opponent. Now came the finishing move. Malcolm conjured a super-strength punch, soared across the chasm, and clocked Disastro square in the chest. The villain flew backward, colliding with a rocky outcrop. Still reeling, Disastro tried to summon more storm power, but Malcolm was on a roll. Maintaining the telekinetic bubble, he clamped Disastro's arms to his sides. With a frustrated roar, Disastro struggled, lightning dancing around his armor. But Malcolm, for once, held his focus. When the dust settled, Disastro was rendered powerless, and the dam didn't burst, though it was battered, and frantic engineers began working on repairs. Cheers erupted from the dam's frightened employees. Malcolm's lips curled into a grin that felt equal parts astonishment and relief. For perhaps the first time, he had orchestrated his abilities in a truly heroic manner. Sure, he left the dam looking a bit battered and half-frozen, but the city was safe. Disastro was turned over to the authorities. Reporters arrived on the scene, microphones at the ready. People wanted to know, how did you manage that incredible save? A little sheepish, Malcolm simply replied, focus and a bit of luck. That was all he cared to boast. Deep down, he knew how tenuous that focus was. A second slip might have unleashed half a dozen random powers. But for tonight, he reveled in the knowledge that he had done something right. News of the victory spread fast. By morning, headlines painted Malcolm in a new, more flattering light. Yes, he was still the hero whose unpredictability was legendary, but now the word hero was used more confidently, with a sense of gratitude behind it. The city breathed a collective sigh of relief, acknowledging that while his methods were occasionally comedic and even downright terrifying, he had a heart of gold and a fierce determination to protect the people who lived under his watch. Master Reiko, reading the headlines, merely nodded. She was proud, of course, but she also knew there was still more training to be done. Malcolm's powers remained a wild array of surprises, and the city would sleep more soundly if he could reliably call upon them at will, so she continued to push him day by day to refine his approach. They built special obstacle courses in a safer location, one that wouldn't topple on their heads. With practice, Malcolm became marginally better at summoning the right power. He learned to think in categories: energy manipulation, physical transformation, mental projection, rather than focusing on the specific effects. That seemed to help. If all else failed, he tried to remain calm and adapt when the wrong power appeared, turning it into a surprising advantage. The city, meanwhile, began to rally behind their bungling champion. Children carried action figures shaped like a man wearing mismatched boots, with a removable cape that occasionally fuzzed out, referencing Malcolm's intangible slip-ups. Local store owners put up signs that read, "Show us your powers, but please don't crash into our shop." Random citizens posted encouraging messages on social media. "At least he's out there trying," said one. More training accidents happened, of course. He once tried to help fix a damaged street light but accidentally phased it through the pavement, leaving it half embedded in concrete. Another time, he attempted to quell a small kitchen fire in a pizzeria by summoning water, only to produce breezes that blew the flames onto the tablecloths. Yet each slip-up ended with a comedic twist and minimal lasting harm. Overall, the city felt that the hero, for all his oddities, was theirs. Eventually, a festival was organized to honor local heroes, including the brave firefighters, police, medical workers, and the self-proclaimed protector of Ingrain City, as Malcolm developed a comedic habit of calling himself. A stage was set up in the central square for the honorees. Malcolm was in the lineup, trying not to cause a fiasco while simply accepting a plaque. The mayor stepped forward, clearing his throat and addressing the crowd. "We gather here not just to celebrate perfection or some unattainable standard of flawlessness, but rather to celebrate the drive to help others, even if it means stumbling along the way. Our city's new hero is living proof that a good heart can overcome even the craziest misfires." At that very moment, excitement rippled through the crowd. A small hover droid with a camera whizzed overhead, filming the ceremony. Malcolm, feeling strangely uneasy, took a step back. Something in the control console must have glitched because the hover droid tilted dangerously, sparking and zooming out of control. It careened toward the stage, swirling around. The mayor ducked. Spectators screamed. Without a second thought, Malcolm leapt forward, bracing himself to act. Carefully, intentionally, he conjured a short-range wind from his hand, gentle enough not to destroy the drone, but firm enough to redirect its flight path. The droid spun, beeped in protest, and crashed softly into a nearby bush, away from the crowd. At first, there was silence, then thunderous applause. No random explosions, no surprised lightning bolts, just the controlled, precise use of a chosen power. Malcolm exhaled a long, trembling breath. Even the mayor shot him a grateful grin. The ceremony proceeded smoothly, with Malcolm receiving heartfelt thanks and a modest trophy, though he held it gingerly, wary of spontaneously turning it into molten metal or something equally disastrous. Eventually, the festival ended on a high note, with no further mishaps. For Malcolm, that was a triumph all its own. By the time he got home that evening, sweaty but elated, Malcolm Maxwell felt something he hadn't truly felt since the day of that freak cosmic event: comfortable in his own skin. Not that he was perfectly in control, he still had plenty of training ahead, but at least he believed in his ability to adapt. And the city, at long last, believed in him too. He flopped onto his shabby couch, still wearing parts of his spandex outfit. Rustling around, he found an old news article that had labeled him a menace. He grinned at it one last time before tossing it aside, replaced by a firm sense of forward momentum. Someday, he hoped, that he would be able to confidently say, "I can fly now," without then plummeting into a water tower. Someday he would freeze the right object at the right time, or shoot lightning from his eyes only when appropriate. But if that day was still coming, he could live with it, especially now that the city was behind him, Master Reiko was training him, and at least a handful of supervillains had learned to think twice before calling him incompetent. Because at the heart of it all, he was exactly what a real hero should be: someone who cared enough to keep trying no matter how many comedic blunders happened along the way. In the end, for Ingrain City, that was more than enough.